Hello and welcome to World Panorama, your weekly roundup of all the major news and events from across the globe. I am Teena Jha. Let's begin the show with this week's top stories. United States to provide critical and encrypted defense technologies to the Indian Army. Agreement signed after first 2+2 dialogue. Both sides also discuss key issues including cross-border terrorism, India's NSG bid and the H-1B visa issue. China offers additional $60 billion aid, investment and loan package to Africa. At the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation in Beijing, President Xi Jinping writes off debt for poorer African countries, but warns against funds going into vanity projects. Iran to hand over Chabahar port to India within a month for operations, says Iranian Minister of Roads and Urban Development. Strategic port is seen as a gateway for trade by India, Iran, Afghanistan and several Central Asian countries. And powerful earthquake typhoons strike Japan days apart. Dozens killed, scores missing as natural disasters wreak havoc in the island nation. India and the United States have signed the much-awaited COMCASA agreement after the completion of the first 2+2 talks. This will give a fresh impetus to the capability and preparedness of the Indian Army. This will also be useful for interoperability of Indian and American equipment from a single platform. Both countries said that with the completion of the first 2+2 talks, a new era of cooperation between the two countries has begun.
In the first edition of their 2+2 meeting, foreign and defense ministers of India and United States held discussions on bilateral and international issues. Defense cooperation was one of the major components of the dialogue. Both sides agreed on making way for joint production and exports of such products. Both countries will also undergo the tri-service exercise and hold interactions between the Indian Navy and Central Command of the United States.
Defense cooperation has emerged as the most significant dimension of our strategic partnership and as a key driver of our overall bilateral relationship. The momentum in our defense partnership has imbued a tremendous positive energy that has elevated India-US relations to unprecedented heights.
We will continue working together to enhance and expand India's role as a primary major defense partner to elevate our relationship to a level commensurate with our closest allies and partners. Today, we took, as you know, a significant step towards that goal by signing the Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement.
Balance of power and peace in the Indo-Pacific also figured prominently in the dialogue. Both countries have decided to increase joint diplomatic and military initiative together in the region, besides involving other stakeholders.
मित्रों, 2+2 वार्ता के दौरान हम चारों मंत्रियों ने भारत प्रशांत क्षेत्र के विषय पर हमारे देशों के बीच विचारों और हितों की बढ़ती समानता देखी। इस संकल्पना के पीछे जो सिद्धांत है, उसे हमारे राजनेताओं द्वारा पहले ही रेखांकित किया जा चुका है।
President Trump recognizes the long-term strategic importance of India's economy playing a productive role in the world's most dynamic and fastest-growing region. He is intent on ensuring the United States, India, and all countries can responsibly reap the benefits of an Indo-Pacific that is open, free, with fair trade and investment.
For immediate consultations, a hotline will be created between foreign and defense ministers of both the countries separately. Both nations expressed unanimity against the cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan.
आतंकवाद का मुकाबला करने के लिए हमारा सहयोग गुणात्मक दृष्टि से आगे बढ़ा है। पिछले वर्ष संपन्न हुए टेररिस्ट डेजिग्नेशंस डायलॉग और आतंकवाद का मुकाबला तथा आंतरिक सुरक्षा में सहयोग को बढ़ावा देने के लिए अन्य तंत्रों के महत्व को हमने स्वीकार किया है। संयुक्त राष्ट्र और फाइनेंशियल एक्शन टास्क फोर्स जैसे अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मंचों में अपने सहयोग को और ज़्यादा गहन बनाने पर भी हमने सहमति व्यक्त की है।
United States also assured India of help in getting entry into the nuclear suppliers group. The talks also focused on trade and energy security. The two foreign and defense ministers met Prime Minister Modi and apprised him with the result of the talks. The next round of 2+2 will take place in the United States next year.
India and US have come closer like never before. It will impact the neighborhood and it will also impact the world. It will be interesting to see that how they work on convergences and how they resolve differences in coming days. Akhilesh Suman for Rajya Sabha Television with camera person D.K. Pandey in Delhi.
And to share his perspective on how fruitful the 2+2 talks have been, we are being joined by former Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Welcome to Rajya Sabha TV, sir.
Thank you.
So, following the inaugural 2+2 talks between India and the US, do you think the defense relationship between both countries has got a significant boost?
Defense has emerged as a very significant component of our bilateral ties. You know, let's see that the first defense agreement between India and the US was signed in 2005. It's not all that long a defense relationship. But since that time, it has really taken off, so that the United States has today emerged as the second largest supplier of defense equipment to India after only Russia. So it is about $16 billion and about 16 to 18% of our total imports of defense equipment. So I'll definitely say, I think as Raksha Mantri Nirmala Sitharaman said, that as far as our strategic relationship is concerned, defense has emerged as the most significant component, and in the overall ties also, it is a very, very important element. For instance, you know what, one of the decisions that has been taken, actually the agreement has been signed, that is the COMCASA, Communication, Compatibility and Security Arrangement. Discussions on that have been going on actually for the last 20 years. I remember I used to be in Washington when we started talking about this, and I'm extremely happy that it has been done. There were some concerns that India had that, you know, we shouldn't put our own defense systems open to, so to say, either espionage or otherwise by the United States or other countries with whom the United States shares its technology. But this COMCASA has been made specifically, it has been designed specifically for India's needs. So COMCASA is huge in the sense it is the second foundational agreement. The first one, LEMOA, the Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, was signed by us in 2016. There's the second one. Discussions are going on BECA, which is about geospatial cooperation. And I'm sure going forward that also.
How does the agreement benefit India?
It benefits because we will be able to import the most sophisticated, the most sensitive technology from the United States and be able to utilize it to its fullest potential. You would also have seen that very recently, United States elevated India from STA2 status to STA1. STA is Strategic Trade Authorization status. And that really brings India to the level of NATO allies. That means 90% of the sensitive technology and the dual-use technology from the United States can now be imported by India without any licensing, without any delays. So that we will be able to import the technology, and through this we'll be able to use it on our platforms. And we'll be able to communicate with the US equipment, US system. So we'll be able to take fullest advantage, maximum advantage, and use this equipment to the fullest potential.
India has to ensure that the benefits from the 2+2 dialogue do not just add up on the other side, and India has to gain significantly. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the program and giving us an insight onto what India and the US are going to achieve from each other through these very crucial talks. Moving on, Iran will hand over the strategic Chabahar port to India within a month for operation as per an interim pact. Iran said this on Friday, a day after the 2+2 talks between India and the US. Iranian Transport Minister also said that India has introduced a banking channel which has been approved by Iran's central bank. The Chabahar port in the Sistan-Balochistan province in Iran's southern coast is easily accessible from India's western coast and is increasingly seen as a counter to Pakistan's Gwadar port, located at a distance of around 80 kilometers from Chabahar. The Chabahar port is being considered as a gateway to golden opportunities for trade by India, Iran and Afghanistan, along with Central Asian countries, bypassing Pakistan. Under the agreement signed between India and Iran earlier, India is to equip and operate 2 berths in Chabahar port, phase 1, with a capital investment of $85.21 million and annual revenue expenditure of $22.95 million on a 10-year lease.
We already have signed the contract and everything is moving forward. I estimate that the Chabahar will hand it in within 1 month to Indian authorities. But I think India as well thinks that our relationship is very essential in the region, so nobody from outside can make a very deep struggle for us. At the end of the day, in the region, we should find out some way for keeping security in the region.
On the issue of US sanctions impacting oil trade between India and Iran, Akhundi said he hoped the 2 countries would find a way out. Iran is India's 3rd biggest supplier of crude oil, but US sanctions starting November will block payment gateways.
Yes, I understand, but I think India as well thinks that our relationship is very essential in the region, so nobody from outside can make a very deep struggle for us. At the end of the day, in the region, we should find out some way for keeping security in the region and just to work with each other. You know that the US is from an outsider, it is not insiders. At the end of the day, the insiders should come together and keep their friendship.
Senior aides to US President Donald Trump scrambled on Thursday to disown a New York Times column written by an unnamed Trump administration official that slammed the leadership style of the US president as impetuous, petty and ineffective. The anonymous op-ed from a person described as a senior Trump official says, and I quote, "Many of the senior officials in Trump's own administration are working diligently from within to frustrate parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations. I would know I am one of them," unquote. The unsigned opinion piece has since been derided by Trump as gutless. At least 11 of Trump's top advisors have denied any responsibility for its authorship. Trump fumed about the piece and said it was a jab from critics who are in denial about his successes. At a rally, the US president called the so-called movement from inside the White House as subversion and treason. The critical spotlight on Trump's leadership comes just 2 months before elections, in which his fellow Republicans will try to hold their majorities in both chambers of Congress. The November vote is being viewed as a referendum on Trump.
The latest act of resistance is the op-ed published in the failing New York Times by an anonymous, gutless coward. I mean, you look at the Washington Post or the New York Times, I can never get a good story. I mean, you look at this horrible thing that took place today, it's really, is it subversion? Is it treason? It's a horrible thing. Even, you know the good thing about that? Even liberals that hate me say, that's terrible what they did. And it is really terrible.
Former US President Barack Obama also waded into the political arena on Friday. He launched a scathing attack on President Trump and Republicans, urging Democrats to vote in November's elections. He said Americans were living in dangerous times, accusing Republicans of undermining global alliances, cozying up to Russia, and exploding the federal deficit. Both parties have encouraged their core supporters to get to the polls on the 6th of November. Democrats need to pick up 23 seats in the House of Representatives and 2 seats in the Senate to gain majorities in Congress and also slam the brakes on Trump's agenda.
Because in the end, the threat to our democracy doesn't just come from Donald Trump or the current batch of Republicans in Congress or the Koch brothers and their lobbyists, or too much compromise from Democrats, or Russian hacking. The biggest threat to our democracy is indifference. Don't lose yourself in ironic detachment. Don't put your head in the sand. Don't boo. Vote. Vote.
China pledged $60 billion in aid and loans to African nations on Monday, saying the financial support comes with no political conditions attached. At a Beijing forum with representatives from almost every African country, the Chinese president said the money will go primarily towards supporting infrastructure development in these countries.
Chinese President Xi Jinping offered another $60 billion in financing for Africa on Monday and wrote off some debt for poorer African nations while warning against funds going towards vanity projects.
China is determined to implement the 5 Nots. Do not interfere in countries in Africa exploring a development path which suits their own country's situation. Do not interfere in the internal affairs of Africa. Do not impose its will on Africa, to not attach any political strings when offering Africa support, and to not seek political expediency during investment and financing in Africa.
Speaking at the opening of a major summit with African leaders, Xi promised development that people on the continent could see and touch, but that would also be green and sustainable. China has denied engaging in debt trap diplomacy, and Xi's offer of more money comes after a pledge of another $60 billion at the previous summit in South Africa 3 years ago.
China is willing to provide governmental assistance, offering another $60 billion in financing for Africa.
Xi, addressing leaders at Beijing's Great Hall of the People, said the new $60 billion will include $15 billion of aid, interest-free loans and concessional loans, a credit line of $20 billion, a $10 billion special fund for China-Africa development, and a $5 billion special fund for imports from Africa. Chinese companies will be encouraged to invest no less than $10 billion in the continent over the next 3 years.
The new $60 billion will include $50 billion of aid, interest-free loans and concessional loans. Government debt from China's interest-free loans due by the end of 2018 will be written off for indebted poor African countries as well as for developing nations in the continent's interior and small island nations.
Xi Jinping's speech at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation was lauded by African experts and residents who believe that China's pledge to extend financial assistance to Africa will give a strong impetus to local economic development.
The ambition that China has for Africa is very big. And it matches Africa's own ambition. That's the first thing. Secondly, is I was very pleased that the president laid out $60 billion initiative. So it's not just infrastructure anymore, just for infrastructure's sake. It's infrastructure to help to unlock critical sectors in which Africa has natural comparative advantage, but which it needs to turn into economic competitive advantage.
Economists on the African continent believe that China's latest pledge will create further gains in trade.
Now, China has been investing in Africa. They had surplus money and Africa had a deficit. So that made the two parties meet at a point of need. Africa badly needed to do investments in infrastructure. China was not only offering money like the World Bank would, they were also offering labor and companies to actually do the roads. Now that phase seems to have taken, it's not yet complete, but I think China is now opening another page to say infrastructure alone is not going to help us. It gave leverage to the Chinese construction companies, it allowed us to lend money, but also now this, to get our money back, we need to open up a development phase in Africa.
We need what we call aid for trade. Aid for trade is that the money you give us should be able to build us so that we trade with you. And actually, what China is doing, China wants that we trade with them. And we have to trade with them when we have infrastructure, when we have enough electricity, when we have done agro-processing, when we have mined our minerals.
Every African country was represented at the summit apart from Swatini, self-ruled Taiwan's last African ally that has so far rejected China's overtures to ditch Taipei and recognize Beijing.
The tiny Pacific nation of Nauru has demanded China apologize for the behavior of its senior diplomat at the Pacific Island Forum, a gathering of 18 regional leaders hosted by Nauru this week. The row erupted on Tuesday after Nauru's president, Baron Waka, prevented Du Quyen, the head of China's delegation, from presenting a speech on climate change. The Chinese delegation stormed out of the session in protest. More details in this report.
A diplomatic dispute between China and the island of Nauru, which is an ally of China's rival Taiwan, marred the opening of a Pacific Islands Forum, highlighting China's growing reach in the region. The tiny Micronesian state is demanding a formal apology from China, but China said it was Nauru, one of the world's smallest countries, that should be saying sorry.
Nauru, as the host of the forum, violated international norms and the rules of the forum.
Nauru, an island country of roughly 12,000 inhabitants, hosted leaders of 18 Pacific nations plus delegations from non-member countries, including the United States and China, for the forum. The spat occurred when Nauru's president Baron Waka refused to give way when the head of the Chinese delegation, Diplomat Du Quyen, demanded to be allowed to address the forum before the Prime Minister of Tuvalu on Tuesday. Waka described China's envoy as very insolent and a bully for speaking out of turn. He said that he had not allowed China to speak as protocol dictated, that he allowed prime ministers and ministers to speak before diplomats. In a statement, he said, and I quote, "I have to be strong here because no one is to come and dictate things for us. It's about the way they treated us. They are not our friends. They just use us for their own purpose, for their own will." During a media conference, Nauru's president was asked whether he would seek a formal apology from China over its envoy's behavior. In his reply, he said, and I quote, "We will go further than that. I tell you, we won't just seek an apology, we will actually get the forum to do it. We will even take it up to the UN. Never mind, they are big, they are our partners, they should not disrespect us." Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying hit back at criticism from Nauru's president.
China lodged stern representation and left the venue ahead of schedule in protest against Nauru for blocking Chinese delegation from speaking at the forum in disregard of common practice of international conferences. Delegation from many other countries also left the meeting venue to express their strong dissatisfaction with Nauru.
The dominant economic players in the Pacific, spending billions of dollars in trade, investment, aid and tourism in a region that staunch US ally Australia has long regarded as its backyard. Chinese lending to the region has surged from nearly zero to $1.3 billion over the last decade, stoking concerns that tiny nations could end up overburdened and in debt. Nauru and Tuvalu are two of 6 Pacific countries to have diplomatic ties with Taiwan. Nauru has no diplomatic relations with China. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Japan has been hit by its most powerful storm in a quarter of a century. Typhoon Jebi has raked the west of the country, killing at least 11 people and leaving a trail of destruction to infrastructure. In the same week, Japan also suffered from a 6.7 magnitude earthquake, claiming dozens more lives. More than 1.2 million people were left stranded in Japan by the powerful typhoon Jebi. The storm made landfall on Shikoku, Japan's smallest island, on Tuesday. Western Japan's main international flight hub, the Kansai International Airport, was blocked completely due to the storm. The main terminal was flooded,
leaving airport staff struggling as they tried to keep the water out. Over 2,600 people were stranded before they were rescued.
I have turned 85 and I was so happy to be going overseas. You never know what happens in life.
It was tiring, but I think it was a mistake to come here in the first place. Finally, I can go back.
I'm relieved to be leaving. I don't think I will have the same experience again. It was painful.
Other essential infrastructure, including rail lines, were also affected by the storm. Wind gusts of up to 208 kilometers per hour were recorded, whereas tides in some areas were the highest since 1961. Typhoon Jebi was tagged as a Category 3 typhoon out of 5 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. The physical damages are expected to put a further strain on Japan's recovery budget as the country continues to deal with natural disasters. In the same week, a 6.7 magnitude earthquake paralyzed Japan's northern island Hokkaido on Thursday, killing at least 16 people and leaving 5.3 million residents out of power and halting transport systems.
The latest report we have received said 9 were dead. 9 were found in cardiopulmonary arrest and 24 were missing after the Hokkaido earthquake. We separated people found in cardiopulmonary arrest from the death toll. But this time we announced that the death toll of including people in the state of cardiopulmonary arrest. We are sorry for this confusion.
This is the highest intensity quake to hit Hokkaido since 1996. It was the latest in a string of natural disasters to batter Japan after typhoons, flooding, and a record-breaking heat wave in the past 2 months. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
British Airways and Heathrow Airport baggage handlers celebrated Freddie Mercury's birthday in style to pay a tribute to their former employee. Yes, Freddie Mercury, the lead vocalist from 1970s Rig Band Queen, worked at Heathrow Airport in London before becoming a legend. We leave you with visuals from that touching tribute. See you same time next week. Thanks for tuning in.
I want to break free.